They've taken the core decks. The words dropped like stones across the command bridge of the Vesker Crown. Just the sudden dimming of the overhead latticework and the sharp shift in atmospheric pressure controls, subtle indicators the station's outer fail-safes had been forcefully bypassed. Admiral Rill Vask stood motionless at the center platform, four clawed digits curling over the embedded track rail, his inner eyelids twitching in controlled succession. He didn't blink. He didn't breathe. He calculated. "Confirm it," he ordered, his voice edged with steel, not panic. From the forward display pit, Lieutenant Strax scanned the green-gold tracking overlay, eyes darting between layered feeds. Confirmed. Full control lost on segments B through F. Power routing redirected. Environmental integrity fluctuates. He paused. They've sealed outer hatches. Internal doors overridden. We've lost engineering, research bays and botanical quadrants. Vask's second-in-command, Commander Vurik, took 2 measured steps toward the central well. His chest plate hissed slightly with each motion, vapor venting from the coolant seams as he moved. "That's more than a raid," he muttered. "They came to hold it, not just disrupt." "No," Vask replied quietly. "They came to bargain, and they brought leverage." On the central projection well, the wireframe of orbital enclave Threx Delta flickered. Red zones expanded like arterial rupture points across the cylindrical habitat ring. Each glowing quadrant meant one thing: lockdown had been achieved from within. 3,112 life signatures, 11 distinct biospectral codes, 1 neutral station, now hijacked. Vask rotated the projection with a flick of his claw tip. "Focus on Dock Cluster 4. How did they get in?" Strax responded. "Modified long-haul miners, thermal camo buried beneath heat sinks, hulls disguised as debris haulers, landed under old contracts. 2 days ago." He exhaled, not frustration, but something colder. Calculation adjusting. "Zarnak," Vurik added, almost a whisper. The name clung to the bridge like static. Zarnak Reclaimers, an offshoot of Dominion loyalists, cast off after internal purges 2 decades earlier. Nomadic, militant, efficient, no ideology, just conquest through historical claim and biotech parity. "Pull up their comm packet," Vask ordered. A new feed activated. The audio transmission was unencrypted, as if they wanted to be overheard. It buzzed with static, then sharpened into a guttural snarl. "This station belongs to the free sovereigns of Zarnak. We claim it under the Dominion Restoration Pact. Withdraw all vessels. Comply within 72 cycles or occupants will be removed." "Removed," Vurik repeated, his neck spines flaring slightly. "They're not bluffing." Vask nodded once. "They already executed 3. Civilian comm logs confirm 3 screams, then silence. Silence. The cruelest confirmation. Council protocol glared at them from the sub-display highlighted in crimson. Non-escalation clause vertical bar. Scientific zones. The Galactic Council's idea of balance. They called it non-intervention. What it meant, in practice, was that command officers like Vask were to do nothing but observe unless Council command greenlit engagement. Vask turned toward the Council relay platform, where Councilor Zirith's form flickered behind a radiation-filtered relay. His skin, a translucent ivory mass of trailing feelers and ink veins, seemed to pulse in erratic rhythm. "They've breached a neutral site. Civilian zone. We need to intervene. Immediately." Zirith's voice arrived with a delay, mechanical, garbled by the encryption relayering. "You know the doctrine, Admiral. Any direct action would undermine treaty compliance with 6 sub-member races. The optics." "To hell with optics," Vask snapped. His vocal cords flared unnaturally for a species known for diplomatic restraint. "The Zarnak don't care how it looks. They care who bleeds." Zirith's tentacles paused mid-gesture. "There may be alternatives," he offered cryptically. Vask narrowed his eyes. "Explain." The counselor leaned forward, as if to obscure what he was about to say from unseen observers. "There's a relay buried beneath the Ethereum vaults. Pre-contact era. Earth signal tier. Unused for 43 standard cycles. Designed for dead channel diplomacy only. Buried, until now." "You're suggesting contacting the Terrans," Vask said flatly. "They have a history with hostage crises. They also have a history of destroying problems completely." "Exactly," Zirith whispered. The relay cut. The bridge sat in momentary stasis. Vurek was the first to break it. "Do we even have authority to reach Earth?" "No," Vask replied. But Zirith just did it anyway. And in that moment, without fanfare, without flares of light or exploding data feeds, something shifted in the background systems. One of the unused comm layers pinged active. A coded Terran handshake signal initiated. It used no encryption the Council could decipher. "Sir," Strax said slowly. "Earth's responding." "How long since the beacon went live?" Vask asked. 17 minutes. A cold sensation slid across Vask's lower gut plate. It wasn't fear. It was inevitability. "Put it through," he ordered. The bridge lights dimmed by half, not for drama, but for bandwidth reallocation. The quantum uplink fused directly into the command rail. No visual appeared, only a voice. "Admiral Sarek Vaughn, I am aware of your situation." It was the first time in 7 decades a human had spoken directly into a Council-linked comm line. His tone was not impolite, but it held no warmth. Vask cleared his throat. "This is Admiral Vask of the Galactic. You don't need to authorize what's already moving." Vaughn interrupted. "We are dispatching 1 unit. Arrival in 4 minutes. Expect no fleet." Strax looked up, confused. "A unit?" Vaughn clarified. 1 man. Then the channel severed. Nothing more. No name, no signature, no encryption layer to trace. Just an echo, hanging like a closed door behind them. The forward scope's grid lit up. Sector 7B distortion. A singular vessel. No transponder. No ID beacon. No visual cam refraction. Just movement, silent and smooth, appearing from the gravitational lensing band behind the outermost moon of Trivax the Cup. Strax paled. "That's not possible." "Track it," Vask commanded, though he already knew the answer. The object was accelerating. It hadn't just entered the system. It had been here, waiting. No communications, no weapons charged. It docked with Vesker Crown, in a maneuver so clean it didn't register a docking vibration. Vask stepped toward the airlock junction. His officers flanked him, hands near sidearms. The access cycle began. Steam hissed. Metal rotated. The chamber opened, and Thorn Merrick stepped through. His coat was plain. His boots carried dust from a Terran surface. No weapon, just a small unmarked case with the Terran seal, a split Earth sigil surrounded by orbital paths. His eyes scanned the room once. No fear, no greeting. Vask moved forward. "You've arrived fast. We were told 1 unit. Merrick replied without pause. "I'm the unit." Then silence followed, and a chill settled deep across every sentient spine in that room. "Identify him," Vask said. The words were stripped of curiosity. They were protocol now, and protocol, he understood, was the only barrier between chaos and command. Thorn Merrick didn't respond. He set the Terran case on the reinforced alloy deck with care, usually reserved for religious artifacts. Then, calmly, he peeled off a single glove and scanned the heads-up retina verifier embedded beside the command rail. The scanner hissed once, then blinked green. "Vessel ID authenticated. Diplomatic override." "Earth 117, announced the command interface. No one had moved, not Vurek, not the bridge security detail, not even the auxiliary deck staff who had gathered unconsciously at their stations, necks tilted slightly, eyes locked on the man who'd entered their ship with no invitation and less explanation. Merrick's voice finally emerged, clipped, unhurried. "I need direct channel access. You'll receive the connection clearance in 3 seconds." As if on cue, a flashing node appeared across the laser plasma deck grid, a data packet embedded in Terran crypto string. Encrypted on 12-dimensional matrices, pulsing with minimal data trails, it didn't carry a virus, it carried a gateway. Strax's hands hesitated over the input panel. "This goes outside Council oversight," he warned. Merrick gave a half glance. "That's the point." Vask stepped beside him. "You're a negotiator?" "No." Merrick's reply was soft but final. "I'm a consequence." A sudden ping drew their attention to the upper display. Sector 9B lit up with interference, brief, stuttering blips that bent spectrum readings, an obscured gravitational trace. Not an attack. Not a stealth ship. Something else entirely. Strax tapped commands furiously. "It's piggybacking through the relay grid." Channel origin is this can't be right. Say it, Vask ordered. Strax looked up. Earth's uplink just bypassed all known encryption tiers, using a signal buried under our legacy archives. It rerouted through inactive maintenance nodes dating back to the pre-expansion cycle. We didn't even know this level was still hot. A fresh voice broke into the room, colder than the vacuum past their hull. Admiral Sarek Vaughn. His voice transmitted through layered compression and frequency flattening, devoid of environmental markers. You are receiving this because your station beacon was reactivated. The Council's pre-war protocol included dead man diplomatic fallbacks. Earth is responding, not negotiating. The channel held no image, just language, concise, unornamented, and rigidly controlled. Vask replied cautiously. We were unaware this channel was active. Vaughn ignored the statement. A Terran asset has boarded your vessel. He holds full planetary authority for operations inside Threx Delta's security perimeter. Hostile interaction with him will be interpreted as engagement against Earth. The laser display showed a single pulse of light, a blinking glyph encoded into Tranarray. It didn't request consent. It marked possession. Vurek leaned in slightly. They're operating under an old war clause. Worse, Vask murmured, his throat dry. They're acting like the clause was never retired. Across the forward window, the Enclave shimmered, a fragile ring around the twin stars, suspended by artificial magnetograph and shielded from stellar winds by dynamic refractors. A marvel of diplomacy and science, now reduced to a pawn in a game that Earth no longer seemed content to observe. Merrick turned toward the deck interface and keyed a command. Instantly a transmission formed, a thin connection thread locked onto Enclave command frequency. The link held, open, no encryption handshake. Strax muttered, brows furrowing. Merrick looked at him, tone dry. Terrorists don't deserve privacy. The feed flickered, resolving into the face of Over-Marshal Korzak, scaled, heavily ridged, and smeared with the ritual ink of battle orders. He bore the coloration of senior command, sulphurous yellow skin laced with volcanic red patterning around the eyes. His voice rumbled through the channel like Earth splitting apart. You presume access to my frequency. Merrick didn't respond. Korzak leaned forward. Speak Terran, or submit. Still nothing. Then after a pause so long it frayed even the most disciplined nerves on the bridge, Merrick spoke. You have 3,112 civilians. You've issued demands, and you did all this within human operational proximity. His head tilted slightly, not in challenge, in calculation. That was your error. The channel hissed with amusement. We've killed 3 already. Korzak hissed, his grin splitting to show sharpened molars. Shall we raise the tally to 5? Merrick didn't blink. You've exhausted your leverage. That's not a threat, it's an arithmetic. The Over-Marshal's smile faded. Merrick set his case on the command podium, unlocking it with a scan of his wrist implant. The bridge lights dimmed, not from fear, but from data rerouting. The case projected a compressed field map over the upper canopy, crimson-laced vector diagrams, labeled in Terran cryptomark, zeroing in on Threx Delta's lower deck node, Module S8. Merrick explained, there's a device in your lower lattice structure, planted 27 cycles ago via maintenance drone. It was disguised as a coolant regulator. It's not. Vurek's breath caught in his throat. What kind of device? Tri-singularity interference anchor, Merrick said simply. When activated, it warps gravitational coherence inside a fixed radius, 2 kilometers, 11 seconds. Strax's hands flew over the console. That's impossible. That kind of energy is dormant, Merrick cut in, until it's not. Korzak's face twitched. For the first time, the Predator looked uncertain. I want scans. The Over-Marshal snapped off screen to his crew. If there's anything there, it's buried in thermal insulation under 30 centimeters of composite alloy and barium shielding, Merrick said. Your scans will pick up a flux node. That's the anchor's pulse signature. It started 5 minutes ago. The silence on the bridge was thick, not fear, tension wound tight like the final coil of a trap waiting to snap. Merrick pressed one button. A countdown appeared on the forward screen. 7:59, 7:58. Strax turned. Sir, that's a real timer. Vask didn't speak. He didn't need to. Korzak growled. You're bluffing. No one, no species would risk killing thousands. You are, Merrick interrupted, with quiet gravity. You took the risk the moment you converted civilians into bargaining pieces. The consequence is already in motion. Disengage the device. Now. Merrick didn't look away. Your surrender is the shutdown protocol. Anything less, and the system escalates to fail-safe B. Behind him, Vurek took a half-step back. Fail-safe B. It doesn't stop. The screen flickered. Korzak's face reappeared, visibly sweat-slick, eyes darting off-screen. His voice was smaller now. What if I release half? No. 80%. No. Merrick's voice didn't change pitch. It didn't even sound angry. It sounded like ice settling on a lake just before it cracked. All or none. The timer ticked on. The air in the command bridge felt denser now, as if the gravity plating had thickened. No one moved. Then Korzak snarled, "We will not, then you'll burn." Merrick finished, and with that he killed the transmission. The screen went black. The timer continued. 7, 11, 7, 10, and still no one on the bridge dared speak. "Something's entering our grid," Strax muttered, his eyes darting between 3 separate heads-up displays. "But we're not detecting a standard FTL wake. It's not coming in. It's been here. It just revealed itself." The bridge dimmed slightly as tracking overlays realigned to adjust for recalculated vector paths. Red ribbons stretched and curved around the outer moons, artificial gravitational shadows distorting real space optics. "Location," Vask said, voice low, flat. Strax tapped in the refractor values. "Drifting from the sublunar bend, between moons Kareth and Vosil. We missed it because its orbit bleeding, riding the gravitational seams." "Stealth. Beyond stealth," Vurek answered. "That's lens masking. They used the moon's own field curvature to bend their visibility index until they were inside our net." The projection refocused. A black needle glided silently along the fringe of the orbital plate. Its silhouette didn't shimmer, it didn't pulse with life, it simply moved, shadow across shadow. Vask studied it carefully. No registry, no transponder, not even a signature flare. Strax zoomed in. Thermal cold, electromagnetic quiet, not cloaked, just engineered never to disturb the water. The command room fell quiet, each officer unconsciously holding their breath as the object approached. No one spoke. The air itself grew heavier, as if the presence of that vessel was thickening the gravity in the command deck. "Is this the unit?" Vurek asked, breaking the stillness. Vask didn't reply. He turned away from the screen and walked toward the forward dock access corridor. Each step echoed against the smooth alloy grating beneath his boots. The docking clamps clicked once, then again, internal systems recalibrating for soft contact. No alarm, no collision buffer. The Terran ship touched hull to hull with the Vesker crown like a surgeon laying down a scalpel. They're requesting pressurization. No override. Hard-coded diplomatic lock, Strax announced, reading off his panel. "Accept it," Vask said. The outer chamber cycled. There was no hiss, no exhaust, just silence as dense as oil. Then the airlock parted. A single man stepped through. Thorn Merrick crossed the threshold like someone walking into his own briefing room. He wore a slate-gray coat, civilian-grade, faint creases down the sides, like he'd been sitting for hours but never moved. His boots were dust-worn, a scuff near the left heel. There were no medals, no insignias, only the Terran seal stitched above the right breast pocket, an etched earth bisected by orbital tracks and flanked by 13 silent stars. His face was unreadable, expression blank, eyes unblinking, not from lack of awareness, but from the deliberate control of someone trained not to project even the possibility of emotion. His only possession was a case. It was rectangular, dark, unmarked, except for a barely visible emblem, the same planetary seal embossed into its center. He carried it in his left hand, like it weighed nothing, though the grip told otherwise. Vask stepped forward to meet him, stopping just short of the pressurized threshold. The guards behind him didn't raise weapons. They didn't need to. Even unarmed, Merrick's presence was heavier than any threat they could have imagined walking through that hatch. "Your Earth's answer?" Vask asked. Merrick's gaze flicked to the Admiral, then downward to the command insignia across his torso. He didn't offer his name. He didn't extend a hand. "I am What's in the case? Merrick paused for a beat, then assurance. Vask's pupils narrowed. Assurance of what? The Terran tilted his head slightly, eyes still locked. That this ends. Strax, still behind the secondary panel bank, whispered to Vurek. He's unarmed. Vurek didn't blink. That case isn't. Merrick stepped past the threshold without further comment. He didn't ask permission. He didn't wait for clearance. His boots made a dry tapping sound on the deck grates, each step echoing like punctuation, in a language no one had ever needed to translate before now. Follow him, Vask ordered. Merrick walked straight to the bridge, no hesitation, no orientation required, as if he'd memorized the Vesker Crown's floor plan in another life. At the forward rail, he stopped. His hand hovered briefly over the main comms node. Then he turned to face the room, gaze passing over every officer present. His voice was quieter than expected. No recordings. Strax glanced at the console. Council requires time-stamped footage for any. Merrick turned his head an inch. The console died. Strax stared. I didn't touch it. I did, Merrick replied. There was no visible movement, no signal pulse. The console had simply obeyed. Vask's upper arms folded across his chest. You understand this is a neutral crisis zone under active hostage protocol. The Council forbids any. I don't take orders from the Council. Merrick interrupted. I don't answer to the chain you follow. I operate on pre-approved Continuity Clause 14b. Reactivation timestamp, 17 minutes ago. That clause was archived 70 years ago, Vurek said sharply. Earth never archived it. Merrick replied. A quiet beat passed. Then Merrick's case clicked open. No weapon, no explosive, no transmitter. Inside, embedded in shock foam and trannery locks, was a single node array, compact, inert, but coded in command-grade encryption that bypassed every visual known to the Vesker Crown's library. This is your link, Merrick said, eyes landing on Vask. It opens one path, contact with the Enclave, and one only. Why not contact them directly? Vask asked, stepping closer. Because you still think this is a negotiation. Merrick rotated the device and activated the uplink. The overhead laser plasma screen flickered to life, not with the usual channel indicators or permission requests, but with a hard-tunneled spike, straight to Threx Delta's central deck core. A blinking glyph appeared in the corner of the screen. Alien, incomplete, unfinished. It shimmered red, then locked in white. The anchor is listening, Merrick said. Vurek frowned. Anchor, but Merrick didn't elaborate. Outside the hull, the Terran vessel remained dormant, latched silently to the Vesker Crown. Its power signature matched the background radiation of the moon's outer ring. Its systems had gone completely dark. It didn't need to power up. It was already where it needed to be, and deep in the sensor node beneath Threx Delta's primary support strut, an old drone housing flashed once, just long enough to transmit a dead signal to the Terran case. Merrick's watch blinked. Time's moving, he said. Then, without waiting for response, he sat in the command pit like he'd always belonged there. Put me through to Korzak. Merrick's voice cut through the dim-lit bridge with surgical finality. No inflection, no preamble, just command. Lieutenant Strax hesitated for half a breath, fingertips hovering above the comm routing panel. The standard authentication buffers weren't designed for Terran override, yet they blinked green the moment Merrick's pulse imprint synced with the node. He's on, Strax confirmed, quietly. The main display above the command rail adjusted, fluxing into shape like a blade hardening in cold water. Static broke, resolved, then twisted into clarity. The face that filled the screen was less face and more snarl, stretched over bone. Over Marshal Korzak, scaled, armored in ritual plating, eyes like liquefied obsidian set in a skull bred for war. Well, he hissed, leaning close enough that his breath fogged the lens on his side of the connection. Earth sends a diplomat wrapped in wool. Do you plan to barter or beg? Merrick stood in the exact same spot. No reaction. He allowed silence to stretch. Not tense, measured. Korzak squinted, thrown by the lack of reply. Say something, Terran. Merrick moved only his lips. You've taken hostages, you've issued demands, and you did it near humans. Korzak flared his gills. We took what was weak. You hover on the edge of galactic relevance, and now you crawl toward us, hoping to That was your final mistake, Merrick said. The screen stilled. Even Korzak seemed momentarily displaced by the simple weight of the interruption. Without a flicker of transition, Merrick reached into the Terran case, pulled the central device core free, and placed it onto the main rail beside the navigation array. No explanation, no reveal, just placement, like a gambler folding his hand face up when no one else knew they were playing cards. "What is that?" Varric asked, already scanning for magnetic field inconsistencies. Merrick activated the node. It didn't glow, it didn't whir, it breathed, subtly emitting a low-frequency pulse that rumbled below hearing, only felt in the chest cavity, like a second heartbeat in a room not meant for two. On the screen, Korzak's expression shifted. His gaze flicked off camera. Someone on his side was already scanning. Merrick finally explained, voice still level. "It's a relay for a TSIA system. Tri-singularity interference anchor. Implanted in your station's substructure. It's been dormant for 27 cycles, masked as a coolant regulator by a repair drone that carried obsolete Alliance credentials." "That's absurd," Korzak snapped. Merrick turned slightly. "Your engineers can check your lattice integrity around subdeck S8. Look for an anomaly that shouldn't be there, a harmonic resonance signature that doesn't match your atmospheric systems. You'll find it embedded 31 centimeters beneath the secondary conduit housing, wrapped in a barium-lined composite sleeve." "Why haven't we detected this before?" Varric asked, eyes locked on Merrick. "Because you weren't supposed to," he answered. "The system doesn't activate until triggered, and that happened the moment the first hostage was killed." Korzak bared his teeth. "You're lying." Merrick didn't blink. "That anchor folds real space in a 2-kilometer sphere for exactly 11.3 seconds. Inside that boundary, molecular cohesion ceases. Not explosion, not fire, just erasure. There will be no shock wave, no debris, only the absence of matter." "Empty threats," Korzak growled. "You would not sacrifice that many lives for principle." "You already did," Merrick responded. The heads-up display beside the laser plasma main screen pulsed with incoming data. Strax adjusted the filters, and Vask leaned in. The station's anomaly map updated. One section flickered in non-natural rhythm, a dormant zone reawakening. "That signature matches the configuration he described," Strax said, voice tight. "It's active." Vask's back tensed. Now Merrick continued, "You have 8 minutes." Korzak slammed a scaled fist down, his claws tearing into the edge of his console. "You threaten me with hidden bombs like a coward. No, I give you clarity. Your bluff was to kill, mine is to allow you not to." The Overmarshal's face twisted, nostrils widening. "If this is a deception, then your station survives. Your troops survive. You survive. No loss. But if it's not, then in 7 minutes, your structure collapses into a vacuum pocket, and every hostage ceases to exist faster than your mind can process their screams." A strange silence fell over the bridge. Not tension, stillness, like the pause before instruments begin playing in a hall with no lights on. Vask could hear the faint rasp of Strax's fingertips sliding across the screen, trying to pull readings from a device far more advanced than their sensors could parse. Korzak spat. "Even humans wouldn't commit genocide to make a point." "I'm not making a point," Merrick said. "I'm correcting a mistake." The Overmarshal's command frequency blinked in warning as one of his officers tried to override the station locks. Korzak turned sharply. "Status." A voice from behind the screen replied in panicked staccato. "We found something. Buried in the deck's subgrid. There's power flow. Synchronous pulses. It's real." Korzak turned back to the display. His swagger had faded. "You bluff," he growled, though less convinced now. Merrick walked 2 steps forward. "Every second you delay increases gravitational friction inside the trigger core. Once it passes threshold entropy, it detonates on its own. You're not waiting for me to act. You're running out of time to stop what's already begun." Varric glanced at the countdown blinking on the bottom left of the display. 6 minutes. Korzak barked, "I want confirmation, now." Merrick said nothing. Vask stepped closer to Merrick, eyes never leaving the Terrans. "Was this always the plan?" "No, this is contingency 7. You would have liked contingency 6 even less." Korzak's pupils narrowed to slits. "You planted a doomsday weapon in our station." "We planted balance," Merrick interrupted. Korzak's scales twitched visibly. The silence on the Terran side was so complete it swallowed the static between their words. Strax's screen flashed again. Another anomaly confirmed. The energy buildup had reached activation curve. 5 minutes, he announced. Korzak turned to someone off-screen, speaking in guttural tones not translated by the bridge system. A murmur followed. Then a pause. Then fear. Merrick folded his hands behind his back. You made a demand. Now the demand makes you. Korzak snarled. You came here with threats. That makes you no better. No, I came here with an offer. Merrick leaned in slightly. Your surrender is the kill switch. All you have to do is say the words. Countdown active, Merrick said, pressing 2 fingers against the center of the Terran device. The moment his biometric signature verified, the rail interface crackled once, then flushed with crimson lines that pulsed outward like ripples breaking across liquid steel. Above them, the heads-up display adjusted. A numerical string materialized in the bottom right quadrant. 759, 758, 757. The temperature inside the command bridge didn't shift, but the sensation of it did, like air trapped in a pressurized chamber just before detonation. No klaxons, no alarms, just time rolling forward with disinterest. You've sealed your own fate, Korzak snarled across the open channel, his voice hoarse with bluster. You'd risk erasing every species aboard this enclave for what intimidation? Merrick didn't lift his gaze. No, for certainty. Counselor Zirath's relay feed snapped to life in the corner of the bridge. His image appeared flickering, refracted slightly by the depth compression of the relay stack. Admiral Vask, he began, ignoring the Terran entirely, you are ordered to cease this operation. Immediately. Council consensus has not been reached regarding Earth's participation. This isn't your operation, Merrick said. Zirath's feelers twitched, unsettled. You're violating protocol on a protected site. This can escalate beyond control. It already did, Merrick replied. Stand down, Zirath ordered. Merrick turned toward Strax. Disable the Council channel. Strax looked to Vask. The Admiral gave the slightest nod. With a flick of his claw, Strax rerouted the signal into a feedback loop. Zirath's face froze mid-reprimand, pixelated into meaningless color bursts. Council just went blind, Strax confirmed. No outgoing comms from this vessel. Merrick looked back to the screen where Korzak remained, no longer speaking, now pacing. His clawed feet echoed against his station's grated deck, movements sharp and uneven. Still think I'm bluffing? Merrick asked. Korzak turned. You want surrender? Then issue demands like a warrior. There are no negotiations, only a trigger. Then what's the point of the countdown? The Overmarshal barked. To remind you that choice is a privilege that expires. Strax's console blinked. We're picking up low-frequency emissions from the anomaly zone. Energy's rising, but it's not nuclear or thermal. Looks like a phased mass field build, matching waveforms exactly to the TSIA schematic. Visual, Vask asked. No imagery, Strax responded. It's below photonic threshold, but its moving timing matches exactly. Looks like it's syncing with planetary gravity wells. Varric approached the center rail. If that's real, then the device is actively building anchor stabilization. It mimics a core radiation leak until a threshold is crossed, Merrick explained. Once the envelope stabilizes, the singularity triplets open. They don't detonate, they converge. How large is the containment window? Vask asked. 2 kilometers, 11.3 seconds. After that, whatever was in the radius no longer exists. No remains, no fragments, just unstitched reality. Strax scanned his logs again, eyes flicking back and forth. Energy curves climbing. We can't override it with our protocols. Of course you can't, Merrick said. It was embedded before your network architecture existed. Korzak barked something guttural off-screen. Another voice responded, nervous, rushed. Then came the metallic scraping sound of an emergency bulkhead being forced open. They're trying to access the anchor directly, Varric muttered. They won't reach it in time, Merrick replied. Even if they locate the casing, it's shielded under grav composite layers that destabilize when tampered with. It's designed to resist tampering by destroying the tamperer. The Overmarshal returned to screen, breathing heavy now. Sweat clung to the base of his neck, dripping behind his armored collar. his bravado thinned by the second. "You could stop this," Korzak said, a crack forming in his tone. "I already did," Merrick answered. 17 years ago, when this anchor was buried under your arrogance. 4 minutes, Strax noted. Korzak bristled. "You sacrifice thousands for leverage. That's not strength. That's madness." Merrick stepped forward. His posture didn't shift, but something in the room contracted, like the space itself bowed slightly under the weight of his presence. "I gave you leverage," he said. "You spent it. Now I give you choice. You can surrender and let this reset, or you can gamble and learn what happens when humans stop playing by your rules. You hide behind bluff and shadow." Merrick tilted his head slightly. "You took hostages in range of Earth's silence. You thought silence meant absence. It didn't. It meant warning." Zirath's relay blinked again on a side panel, partially restored. Only text came through this time. "Council demands explanation. Immediate stand down." Strax muted the message with a hand flick. "Do we respond?" Vask shook his head. "Not until they remember how to listen." Korzak bared his teeth. "You call this deterrence? This is tyranny." Merrick didn't respond. He simply reached down and tapped his case once. A new projection bled from the corner display, station schematic rendered in full vector overlay. The anomaly zone now glowed in red, lines pulsing with deep harmonic rhythm. "Containment field is oscillating," Strax whispered. "Not breaching, shaping. That's containment evolution. It's preparing for fold." 3 minutes, Varric added. Merrick exhaled once. "I suggest you use them." Korzak slammed a hand against the console. "If I surrender, what guarantees are there?" "None," Merrick said. "But surrender is the key. If it's spoken with full biometric code, the anchor aborts. If not, the event completes." Another voice whispered into Korzak's feed, this one sharper, clearer. He turned away, engaged in silent conversation. Merrick stepped back from the center of the bridge and crossed his arms, silent again, not pressing, not baiting, simply waiting for inevitability to ripen. Strax's fingers hovered over the signal reader, now pulsing every 1.3 seconds. "The anchor's in its final harmonic tier. We're in containment shell phase." "Council override?" Varric asked. "None. Earth command systems are running isolated. They aren't linked to Council code." Korzak returned to the screen, sweating now, scales dulled, eyes no longer defiant. 1 minute, Strax said. The Overmarshal stared at the Terran, all fire drained from him. A long beat passed. Then came the first whisper of doubt. "We were considering release." "No," Merrick said. "This isn't about consideration. This is about action. Say the code. Transfer the keys." Now, on the heads-up display, the countdown reached 0:49. Korzak looked past the screen, towards something unseen, perhaps a crew member, perhaps his own reflection. Then, with a shudder that reached down to the bridge crew of the Vesker Crown, he leaned in and began to speak. Merrick listened without satisfaction, just resolution, the kind that doesn't celebrate survival, only acknowledges it was temporarily earned. "Authorization received," Lieutenant Strax said, barely above a whisper. "Biometric string is clean. Full station command has shifted." On the overhead heads-up display, the countdown froze. 0:41. Every digit on the rail display stopped blinking. Not reset, not cancelled, frozen, as if time itself had agreed to pause, just long enough to watch what happened next. Korzak stood on the transmission screen, shoulders slack, the posture of a creature who had finally realized he'd been playing someone else's game since the beginning. His command collar had been unlatched. A faint tremble in his jaw exposed the fatigue beneath the scaled bravado. "The hostages," Merrick said. Korzak exhaled. "Already in motion." Strax confirmed it before anyone could ask. "Life sign dispersal patterns are spreading across the medical wing. They're moving. Mass displacement signatures match controlled release. Not an ambush." "Security grid?" Varric asked. "Dropped. Biometric locks are cleared. Vaulted cells are opening one by one. No traps set." Merrick remained motionless, as if even movement now would stain the sterile control he'd maintained since he arrived. "What about the external systems?" Strax pulled up the Enclave's automated protocol stream. The screen spilled open with cascading data. "Atmospheric rebalancing. Transit corridor unlocks. evac beacons reigniting after 2 decades of dormant programming. They're initializing full auto-evacuation, Strax confirmed. The Enclave's fallback systems are rebooting. Looks like they're following Earth contingency templates. Civilian safe lanes first, military last. Korzak's voice returned, the growl gone. We surrender. I've transmitted the final override. Vask glanced toward the Terran at his right. Merrick still hadn't moved. Anchor status, Vask asked. Merrick stepped forward once, extended a single fingertip toward the Terran node embedded into the command rail, and pressed down. The node pulsed white, then dimmed. Anchor is inert, Merrick said. For now. Korzak narrowed his eyes. You said surrender was the shutdown key. I did what you asked. You bought time, Merrick corrected, not amnesty. The channel flickered. No crash, no interference, just deliberate closure. A weighted silence hung between the Terran and the bridge crew. Not victory, not relief. Something else. A realization, perhaps, that survival had never been theirs to claim in the first place. Strax swallowed. Evacuation progress is steady. They're cycling crew out first. About 200 already through Corridor 4. All other hatches are opening in sequence. Medical bots just activated. No hostile signatures. Send medical support once full transition completes, Vask instructed. Strax nodded. Already routing a supply barge from the Rendron fold. Good, Vask said, though his voice carried none of the comfort that typically followed such outcomes. He turned to Merrick, who was still watching the screen like a man waiting for a ghost to appear. That device, if they had refused. Merrick didn't answer right away. His eyes never left the frozen display. Then we would have recovered nothing. No wreckage, no signal, just data loss. The Enclave would have folded into noise. Strax adjusted his display filters again, searching the background systems. I can't detect a withdrawal command on the anchor. Did you neutralize it permanently? It doesn't deactivate, Merrick said. It waits. You mean it's still there? Yes, that's a risk. No, Merrick said quietly. It's a reminder. A single vibration ran through the deck. Nothing violent, just the kind of structural whisper that said the docking tubes were releasing. The bridge adjusted to the micro shift, their boots pressing down just a fraction harder against the floor. Korzak's fleet, once postured in superiority above the Enclave, now began its slow retreat. Not a full withdrawal, more a quiet backstep into obscurity. No weapons fired, no explosions, no chases, just an empty orbit, littered with questions. Vask folded his upper arms behind his back. They'll regroup. They won't forget, Merrick replied. No statement, no formal record from Earth. Varric asked. Merrick lifted the case and sealed it shut. The clicks echoed, singular and final. The message was the method. As he walked toward the exit corridor, Strax spoke again. What do I tell the Council? Tell them, Merrick said without stopping, that Earth intervened in a hostage crisis, and no one died. They'll want to know what it cost, Strax added. Merrick paused in the threshold, one hand resting on the cold panel. Nothing we weren't prepared to lose. He stepped through. The hatch sealed behind him. Vask stared at the now dark screen. That wasn't negotiation, he said after a long stretch. No, Varric answered. That was something else entirely. Deterrence, Strax offered. Possibly, Vask muttered. Or a lesson. The rail lights dimmed slightly as the Terran vessel disengaged. It didn't broadcast a departure notice. It didn't pulse its drives for visibility. It just slipped away, hidden again in the gravity folds where moonlight never reached. Council's trying to re-establish link, Strax said. Let them wait. Vask turned back to the heads-up display, where the station's schematic still glowed, alive now with movement. Civilian shapes, energy returns, recovery markers, and buried beneath it, unmoved, unactivated, but watching, an anchor, a memory waiting to be needed, or not. You allowed an unregistered Terran asset to threaten a multilateral station with a singularity device. The accusation ricocheted across the marble-tiered hall like a plasma discharge. Every eye in the high chamber was fixed on Admiral Reland Vask, who stood alone beneath the Council's crystalline ceiling, a latticework of suspended light woven with slow-moving displays of stellar drift. The stars shimmered above his head like judgment waiting to drop. I didn't authorize anything, Vask replied. Earth did. Counselor Drav from the Hive Collective clacked his mandibles against his breathing mask. a gesture of offense in their culture. Yet your crew complied. You allowed a human civilian to seize command of a council-designated vessel. He wasn't civilian, Vask said. And he didn't seize command. He never asked for it. He simply made us aware we didn't have it anymore. A wave of murmurs passed through the chamber, skeptical, uneasy. Behind the curved benches of each delegation, assistants whispered into their enviro-links, some visibly recording, others trying to decrypt Earth's non-response stance. Councillor Drex, elder of the Eldovian quorum, adjusted the trim of his layered ceremonial plates and stood. "Let us not obfuscate the central crime here," he thundered. A member civilization of no official standing, no military parity, bypassed all recognized diplomatic protocols, and leveraged an extinction-class device inside Council territory. Had they not, Vask answered, there'd be no one left aboard Threx Delta to debate this with. You justify madness with convenience, Drex spat. I justify it with survival. Another ripple of noise, this time sharper, cutting. Somewhere in the upper gallery, an archivist dropped a slate. The impact shattered the tension, just enough for the main platform to flicker with warning glyphs. Incoming delegation override. The air changed, not temperature, not density, but tone. The council's central dais lit in a slow ring of white as a new figure entered the chamber, not through the rear gates, but through the sealed diplomatic threshold, which only opened for planetary command-level visitors. Admiral Sarek Vaughn walked through, no escort, no rank display, just a data tablet in one hand, and the Terran seal on his collar, glimmering faintly under the chamber's fractal light. He didn't bow, he didn't pause, he simply spoke. You've gathered to discuss escalation, Vaughn said. Let's instead discuss causation, Drav hissed. You have no standing to address this body. Vaughn lifted the tablet, and the chamber's central interface synced without request. All projections auto-adjusted. Heads-up emitters blinked once, then displayed real-time intelligence, network overlays, migration models, warzone fluctuation arcs, planetary disruption curves. 1,000 screens resolved into a singular picture, interlinked, deliberate, terrifying. What you're looking at, Vaughn began, is a 26-year Dominion shadow campaign. He walked slowly across the floor, his footsteps echoing louder than the hissed objections of several counselors. This thread, he continued, shows the initial infiltration patterns seeded through refugee movement on the rimward sectors. This one, he flicked a command, illustrates strategic decay inside treaty void regions between sectors 5 and 8. Zarnak wasn't an accident. It was an engineered powder keg. Councillor Zireth, still pale from the Threx incident fallout, leaned forward. Why wasn't this intelligence shared before? Because you never asked, Vaughn said. And Earth wasn't interested in repeating history while being treated as decoration. You're implying Earth anticipated this crisis. Drex snapped. We didn't anticipate it, Vaughn said. We mapped it. He shifted the display again. A timeline emerged, annotated with Dominion black channel intercepts, sabotage pattern correlations, infrastructure stress testing, and highlighted in red, emergent spikes aligned with Zarnak fleet positioning. Threx Delta was a test, Vaughn said. Phase 1. What evidence do you have that Dominion is involved? Drav asked, his tone more cautious now. Vaughn activated the final layer of the display. It showed a communication log intercepted 2 cycles prior to the Enclave breach. The encryption was Dominion-grade, but the signature was unmistakable, overlap with known Black Op vectors, traced back to the collapse of the Arkelian borderline. We've seen this pattern before, Vaughn added. Too many times. They stir instability. They push fringe factions forward. They let you fight each other while they watch. A moment passed. Then, too, no one spoke. Even Drex remained seated. You've watched Earth stay quiet, Vaughn said, letting the silence echo. You assumed silence meant absence. We didn't engage because we wanted to know who would react, who would prepare, and who would ignore. And now we know. Zirath broke the silence. Why now? Why intervene in this one? Because Phase 2 begins in under 90 days, Vaughn said. His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The displays reconfigured. Fleet movement paths shimmered into focus. Dominion warships, classified designs, parked at anomalous intervals along dead space corridors, staggered, spread, hidden, until you connected the dots. We've traced 32 vessel groupings operating under outdated registry masks, Vaughn continued. 8 worlds already destabilized by supply interference. 5 minor colonies vanished from signal grids. This isn't a crisis, it's a rehearsal. Counselor Torvik, senior among the Phrygian collective, finally stirred. And what would Earth have us do? Vaughn raised his eyes for the first time since entering. Take us seriously. He deactivated the projection. Every display dimmed. The anchor wasn't a declaration of power, he said. It was proof of preparation. Drav blinked. So Earth threatens war to earn respect. No, Vaughn said. Earth prevents war by being ready long before anyone else dares admit it's coming. Torvik tapped a finger against his staff. And what does Earth request in return for this insight? Not a request, Vaughn said. A condition. He lifted a second tablet and tossed it onto the central tribunal rail. The Council's translation interface parsed it mid-air. Request for permanent council seat, dissolution of developmental oversight protocol, reform of interstellar warfare ethics charter. The council must evolve, or it won't survive. What's next? Zireth stood slowly. You've prepared for every angle. We had time, Vaughn said, and we've wasted enough of it pretending to be smaller than we are. Let the chamber come to order, Elder Torvik announced. His voice layered in amplification glyphs embedded in the high canopy of the council hall. The light dimmed from the upper observatories as session seals engaged. Debate could begin. The chamber pulsed with low-voiced unrest. Councilors shuffled data slates, flared membranes, exchanged codes across neural relays. The memory of Vaughn's silent exit still weighed heavier than any broadcast Earth could have transmitted. Vask stood near the perimeter column, arms behind his back, no longer center stage, yet still being watched. The aftershock of the Threx Delta incident had not faded. It had simply changed temperature. The Council's lead mediator, a cylindrical fractal species known as Varick Echo, opened the session feed. The Terran conditions are registered. They are as follows. First, permanent voting presence on the High Council. Second, the immediate dismantling of the Developmental Oversight Protocol. And third, ratified reform of the Interstellar Warfare Ethics Charter. A silence. Then came the first burst of resistance. Councillor Drex, Elder of Eldovia, rose with a rasp from his seat of fused shellstone. They blackmailed their way to a throne, he growled. We reward threats now, or we finally recognize leverage when it's aligned with justice, countered Zirith, whose voice no longer quivered. Drex turned sharply. The Oversight Protocol protects weaker species from exploitation. No, Zirith interrupted. It decides for them. We disguise control as shepherding. Murmurs again, but this time from more corners of the chamber than Drex expected. A projection field activated above the debate platform. It was Vaughn's final transmission, preloaded before he'd left. Static cleared. His face appeared, not live but fresh. We didn't hide because we feared you, Vaughn said calmly. We hid to measure the cost of joining. He let that breathe. And we found the cost too high. Not because of military thresholds or ideological differences, but because we saw how the Council operated when it believed no one was watching. You claimed moral clarity, yet quarantined species for their trade potential. You delayed conflict response until it was politically convenient. You wrote entire empires out of existence with silence. Councillor Drav shifted in his seat, mandibles tight against one another. Earth has the capacity to destroy, so do many others. What makes us dangerous isn't our weapons, it's our timing, and today we choose to act. The feed ended. Torvik leaned forward. Do we vote? There's more to discuss, Drex said. No, Vask spoke at last, stepping forward. There isn't. All eyes turned to him. The air inside the chamber cooled as its systems detected a threshold for major intervention. I watched them, Vask continued. From the first contact, through the final minute of the countdown. No posturing, no performance, just inevitability wrapped in logic. Threats, Drex insisted again. No, Vask replied. They offered terms before they issued warnings. They used silence where others would have used warheads, and they ended it without a single death. A flick of his wrist, and a new display unfolded, a timeline transcript of the Threx Delta incident, curated by the Vesker Crown's onboard archivist AI. The sequence lit up in 3 primary colors: Council delay, Zarnok escalation, and Terran intervention. The disparity was damning. Drex hesitated. You side with Earth now, I side with outcomes. Torvik turned to his delegation block. Then let us consider Earth's requests. Zereth raised a thin limb. They weren't requests, that hung in the room longer than anything before it. Drex stepped back, his hand clenching the edge of his bench. His eyes scanned the room, and saw no rally behind him. The balance had shifted. Not in noise, but in trust. I move to ratify the first condition, said Councillor Vorix, representing the Orlanic ascendancy. Earth receives a permanent seat. No one objected. Torvik nodded. Motion passed. I move for formal repeal of the Developmental Oversight Protocol, added Zereth, almost too quickly. Drav opened his mouth, then closed it. The collective weight of the data left little standing room. Second motion passed. Torvik turned. And the third. The room remained still. Then from the lowest seat in the 5th tier, a quiet voice. War has changed. So must our rules. It was Herrick, youngest among the Arcanist block, rarely heard, often ignored, but his voice was steady. I vote yes. Others followed, one by one, reluctantly, in some cases, but with growing acceptance. When the tally locked, Torvik read the outcome aloud. All 3 conditions accepted by council majority, effective immediately. Vask exhaled. Slow. Status, Torvik asked. Zereth tapped his slate. Earth has been notified. Their reply, as expected, is brief. A new screen lit. Acknowledged. Terms fulfilled. Standing by. No further signature. No congratulatory message. No celebration. Just acknowledgement. Drav finally spoke again, lower now. What are they waiting for? Vask stared at the simple text. Probably nothing. Torvik frowned. Nothing. They weren't asking to join, Vask replied. They were asking if we were ready to stop pretending we could do this alone. The chamber dimmed as the session seal was lifted. Councillors dispersed, some stunned, others silent, but none unchanged. Zereth approached Vask as the delegates thinned. You saw it before the rest of us, he said. That's rare. I didn't see them, Vask answered. I listened. Zereth raised a feeler in farewell, then retreated to the shadows of his delegation's chamber. Vask remained behind a moment longer. He turned toward the largest heads-up display near the central command table. Its screen showed nothing more than a quiet orbit. Threx Delta, restored, empty now, and safe. He remembered Merrick's final words. It didn't need to detonate. They just needed to believe it would. But now standing here, he wondered what if it had, and what happens if one day, it must. Was it real? Vask's voice lingered in the private chamber like the last heat from a fading coil, low, measured, without force. The kind of question asked only when the answer has already settled into the marrow. Merrick stood opposite him beneath the observation dome of the Kavros relay station, where the stars weren't painted as symbols or watched for navigation, but dissected for silence. Behind them Threx Delta floated in dim orbit, scrubbed clean, every corridor now quiet, every hostage home. He didn't look at Vask when he answered. You already know the answer. Say it anyway. Merrick didn't blink. It didn't need to be. Korzak believed it was. There was a pause, a long one. Vask's arms folded slowly, a subtle act of restraint. He looked up at the dome, where council ships dotted the nearby lanes, still arranging themselves into new patterns that didn't know what to do without hierarchy. And Merrick turned. Yes, it was armed. The words dropped like gravity returning. Vask exhaled through his nose. Why? Because if I'd been wrong about him, about his fear, then 3,000 lives would have ended anyway. Only difference is whether they ended with consequences. Vask stepped forward. The distance between them narrowed to less than a breath. You gambled. No, Merrick said. I prepared. They stood in silence as the dome's lighting adjusted for solar drift, casting long shadows across the stone-plated floor. Vask's voice dropped further. And if he'd called it? If he waited 10 seconds longer? I had options, Merrick replied. What kind of options? The kind I didn't explain to him. Vask studied him for a beat, searching the face for anything. Regret, pride, calculation. There was none. Merrick didn't wear the moment. He had already outgrown it. You understand what you've done, don't you? Vask asked. Merrick nodded once. reframe the rules. The Admiral looked away. You've shifted the gravitational center of every discussion this council will have for the next century. Good, Merrick replied. Talk was overdue for consequence. Silence again. But this time, it wasn't empty. It was loaded, strung tight between memory and forecast. Earth doesn't want to dominate, Vask said, more to himself than anyone else. No, Merrick agreed. We want to stop being underestimated. Then why not lead? Why hide? Merrick's gaze drifted to the station's outer panes, where Dominion ships shimmered in stealth configurations along the distant stars, refracting against nothing. Because leadership is louder than action, and loud things get studied before they're respected. Vask approached the main relay. With a flick of his wrist, he activated a secure feed. A network of updated threat paths emerged. Dominion formations moving. Not toward war, not yet, but not standing still either. You knew this was coming, Vask said, reading the drift vectors. We knew Threx was bait, Merrick answered. We just didn't know how long the Council would let the line go slack. Vask leaned against the console. You really think this was just Phase 1? It always is, Merrick replied. The first wave never wins. It measures. He turned to leave. Vask spoke again. Why tell me? Merrick paused at the hatch. Because you're the first one who didn't try to argue with what had already started. That makes you useful. Charming, Vask muttered. Before the door sealed behind him, Merrick added, You'll need to decide what kind of future the Council deserves, or Earth will decide for you. Then he was gone. The chamber stayed dim. Vask remained still. He stared at the laser projection of the Dominion fleet formation. Thin, deliberate arcs slicing the outer systems. No message, no declaration, just movement. Below them Earth's ships were moving too, not through gates, not in armadas, but in threads. Singular vessels, shielded in gravitational drag, leeching off black holes to mask their transit. Invisible, not preparing to strike, preparing to be believed. As the minutes passed, Vask triggered the final transmission from Merrick's case, left behind intentionally on the rail. The message was brief. Your surrender was the only key. You chose it. The next enemy may not. Prepare accordingly. Then it ended. The screen cleared. Vask straightened his collar and moved to the center of the console. Route a channel to all quadrant fleets, he ordered. Specify clearance. Ask the station's control AI. None, he said. Public frequency. Message. He stared out the dome one last time. Let the galaxy know Earth didn't offer us a treaty, he said. They offered us a standard. The stars didn't answer. They rarely did. But somewhere beyond the inner rim, a Dominion warpath began to scatter, not in defeat, not in fear, but in caution, as if uncertainty itself had grown teeth. And far beyond those arcs, Earth's 7th Fleet settled into the void. No drums, no banners, no beacon call, just readiness, because humans didn't negotiate with terrorists, and they never gave second warnings.